Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Dispatch Live as Steve Hayes has a sip of what is no doubt Spanish wine. We are here to talk about many various and sundry things. We have Steve, we have David, and we have, I think, Kevin McCarthy, but not in person. Should we start with him, though?
President Biden did lie about his own knowledge of his family's foreign business dealings. Nearly $20 million in payment were directed to the Biden family members and associates. FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. It appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration. I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
So this was the not terribly unexpected development of the day. I suppose this has been coming for a while, but I am genuinely curious, and I'd like to get your read on this from both of you, because you guys have, I think, just a much better feel for this sort of thing than I do, and certainly a much deeper base of knowledge. But why now?
Look, the speaker is under a tremendous amount of pressure from his conference. I think if it were up to him, and only up to him, he would focus on governing and trying to extract as many concessions out of a Democratic Senate and a Democratic White House as a 4-seat House majority could. I think we saw that with him with the debt ceiling fight. We all pile on Kevin McCarthy from time to time, some of us more than from time to time, and he often deserves it. But what he was able to pull off with the debt ceiling fight was pretty remarkable. With that 4-seat House majority, he really directs a debt ceiling fight with President Biden and Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in the Senate, and he wins. And he set up an entire system of appropriations this year that was going to keep spending at certain levels and make, even if it was useless progress, still progress nonetheless towards curbing or at least holding the line on spending. And I think he would continue to do that if he could, but his conference has been restless, particularly the right flank. After they win that victory on the debt ceiling, that's not good enough for them. And they're getting pressure from their base, from media talkers. And so they decide to blow it all up. And they return from the August recess today. But as this day was getting closer in late August, you heard the usual rabble-rousers on the right, Matt Gaetz and others, say that if we don't get an impeachment inquiry, we're not going to play ball with spending, and we might even proceed with a motion to vacate. Now, I think
David, wait, can I pause you? Can you explain what a motion to vacate is?
Yes. So a motion to vacate is what you do when you want to oust a speaker midterm, absent a normal vote. And under the rules that Kevin McCarthy agreed to get his gavel, and recall it took about 15 or 16 rounds of voting, all it takes is one member to bring up a motion to vacate. There are not enough House Republicans to go along with it, but I think all of this pressure, plus pressure from former President Donald Trump, has pushed Kevin McCarthy into a place he didn't want to be, which is not that he won't put forward an impeachment inquiry and get it going, as he did today. He had said previously that we are going to hold a vote on an impeachment inquiry, unlike what Speaker Pelosi did for President Trump's first impeachment over that Ukraine call. And he really wanted to have his ducks in a row with the facts already in existence. But I think given the pressure from the former president, who's the leading contender for the Republican nomination, given the pressure from his acolytes in Congress, which includes members of his leadership team, Elise Stefanik being one, Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary, being another, to name a few, I just think he felt pressure to get this going. Why didn't he hold a vote? Because he did not have the votes. There are not 218 Republican votes in the House for an impeachment inquiry. And so this doesn't quite have the teeth of a formal impeachment inquiry voted on, but it'll still get the ball rolling in that regard.
There's a little bit of tension there in your explanation, if you don't mind pointing it out.
Please.
One thing is that he's under tremendous amount of pressure, but then there aren't enough votes to do this. So if most of the Republicans in the House don't want to do this, or at least not enough to make up a majority to win the vote, why is the pressure from this minority so significant?
Because number one, I think they represent the Trump caucus.
Mm.
And I think in a sense, what they want is what Trump wants. And the former president could really create trouble for Kevin McCarthy if he wanted to. Now, that's number one. I think number two, Kevin McCarthy is trying to balance a number of pressure points, a number of things that need to get done. They need to pass a spending bill of some sort where the government shuts down. They need to play ball in some respect with President Biden and a majority Democratic Senate and a majority of Senate Republicans that want to fund the president's supplemental for military aid to Ukraine, among other things. And Senate Republicans do not believe in government shutdowns with good reason. They don't work politically, at least when you're deemed the cause of the government shutdown versus just the bystander. And so I think what he's trying to do is placate members on the right without putting the majority of his members who prefer to wait, particularly those in Biden won districts, under the knife of having to vote for this thing. And so I just think it's a balancing act with him. Look, I think there are different ways to go about it. I think you could just say, fine, you want to try and get rid of me as speaker? Go for it. I don't care. He said something to that effect today. But I think that he could play a bigger game of hardball and use the majority of the majority that he has to get his back and to say, listen, I'll negotiate with Democrats if I have to. And if you guys don't want to play ball, I guess that's what I'm going to have to do. But I don't think that's not a route that speakers like to go. As former Speaker John Boehner is fond of saying, a leader without followers is just some guy taking a walk. And often in the House, to be a leader is to be a follower. And I think that's, what Kevin McCarthy is trying to navigate.
I always associate John Boehner with saying no olives in that. But Steve, you get to talk. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think everything that David said is right. The one place I would disagree with him slightly is in his claim that nobody wins from a government shutdown. Government shutdowns aren't political winners for the people who cause them. I would say it depends what winning means, because in a House Republican conference where you have many members, particularly those who are pushing Kevin McCarthy towards a potential shutdown, certainly pushing him to open an impeachment inquiry, the people who are doing that do win. They win if there's a shutdown because they come from deep red districts, and the only threat to their reelection is a potential primary from the right. So for them, part of the goal here, the means are the ends in this sense. If you push an impeachment inquiry and you fail, well, you've pushed and you're a fighter, and you can use that to bolster your fighter MAGA credentials. If you pushed and you succeed, then you've shown that you've got power as a MAGA fighter. I would say the same is true with the shutdown. Part of the challenge, I think, for Kevin McCarthy is that he has, depending on how you count them, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, maybe as many as 4 dozen Republicans for whom a shutdown is a good outcome. Like, they're not trying to avoid the shutdown. They're perfectly happy to have a shutdown. Some of them have said this publicly. More of them believe it privately. And that's just a really hard place for Kevin McCarthy to be. I think, if you remember back to the 15 votes that David mentioned to make Kevin McCarthy speaker, they came along, certainly on our Dispatch Lives at the time, a Dispatch podcast, with the prediction that would look like the easy part, given what was in front of him. And what we meant by that is exactly this. The final thing I'll say is, I could answer your original question, so why now? Why are they doing this now? I think really with 2 words: Donald Trump. There was a report out this afternoon that House Republicans have been conferring with Donald Trump about opening this impeachment inquiry. That he has, he's been saying this publicly for quite some time. He wants House Republicans to impeach Joe Biden. He's apparently been pressuring them, including Elise Stefanik, whom David mentioned, including Kevin McCarthy and others, to impeach Joe Biden. Well, why? Some of this, I think, if you're, we don't need to do sort of deep speculative psychological analyses on why Donald Trump would want Republicans to impeach Joe Biden. He said it. They did it to us. I think that's a direct quote. They did it to us, or they did it to me. So part of this is just simple retribution. The other part, I think, has a bit more of a sophisticated political purpose, and it's where I think the conventional wisdom, or sort of the gelling conventional wisdom in Washington, may well be wrong. You have people, sort of cable television networks, sort of mainstream media saying, isn't this likely to backfire on Republicans? They launched this impeachment inquiry. There are 18 Republicans running in districts that Joe Biden won. And so I think to a certain extent, they're right that this complicates the ability of Republicans to keep the majority in the House. But if you're Donald Trump, this is a much simpler equation. He wants to be able to say, everybody in Washington is corrupt. This man, under 91 indictments, 44 of them, I think, federal, going to spend a lot of time in court in the next few months, wants to be able to have voters say, everybody in Washington is corrupt. Everybody in Washington does this. Look, Joe Biden is under impeachment investigation. If you're thinking about voting for Joe Biden because he has cleaner hands than I do, that's a bad vote.